I'm Cornerstone Government Affairs, and I've been lobbying and representing clients in Annapolis and other jurisdictions for about 14 years now. And I've also, in my prior positions, I represented Johns Hopkins University and medical system before the Maryland legislature and executive branch. I'm an attorney by training, but lobbying takes up all of my time these days. So nice to see everyone this morning.
Great. Ellen, can you share a little bit about you?
I can, thank you. I'm Ellen Valentino. I work here at Cornerstone with Delora. Been around way too long and have seen these change in administrations often and look forward to being part of the conversation, Rebecca. Thank you. Thanks for including us and putting this forum together. I think it's an important one, in particular for women going into the next administration.
Absolutely. And I know in the Hogan administration, they had stressed women as a underrepresented group that they wanted to make sure was being highlighted for government appointments. Before we get into the meat of the matter, I just wanted, for those of you who don't know much about Executive Alliance, we're a professional women's organization that is dedicated to accelerating the success and leadership of accomplished women in Maryland. So we advocate for women. We are active legislatively. We do things like pushing our members forward for commission appointments, for board appointments. We have a strong peer-to-peer network for senior level executive women. We also run a mentoring program for mid-level career women, and of course run lots of programs. And we may be, I don't know if famous is the right word, but we do a lot with our Women of Excellence program, which just we had just last month. I would like to thank our sponsors. We have a lot of partners that support the work of Executive Alliance. So thank you to all of those organizations that stand with women. And I also wanted to share our honor roll designation. So every year, Executive Alliance analyzes the representation of women on corporate boards and C-suites in Maryland. We've done this since 2007 for publicly traded companies headquartered in Maryland. This year, we're opening this up to the private sector and asking companies, private sector companies and nonprofits, to apply for our honor roll designation. And so among other requirements, each organization that's designated as an honor roll company has at least 30% of their board seats held by women, and at least 30% of their executive leadership identify as women. So the deadline for that application is November 22nd. We will most likely extend a little grace to all of us and extend that deadline a little bit farther. But if your company fits, or you know of a company that would fit that designation, I urge you to apply. And you can do that at executivealliance.com/honor roll. And now I think that's all my chitter chatting about things Executive Alliance does. Let's pop into Greenbag. So Ellen and Delora, tell us, what are Greenbag appointments?
Sure. So Greenbag appointments, out of the, I think we had on this list 1,000, but I actually went back and confirmed it's more like 1,700 appointments that the governor will have purview over in the state. Of those, though, Greenbag are the 20 that must be confirmed by the Senate. And the rest, it says regular routine board and commissions, not to diminish their prestige. They simply don't have to be confirmed. Senate confirmation usually goes pretty smoothly. You can expect that with the Senate The way it is currently with a supermajority of Democrats, they would have worked out all the kinks and you wouldn't expect a real challenge to much of these green bag appointments, but it happens. It's very, very rare. So it's just a subset of those appointments that must be confirmed. So once you are appointed by the governor's office, it then goes to the Senate Appointments Committee.
Oh, bear with me. We're just muting a couple people.
No problem. And so once it's confirmed by the Senate, then individuals will officially be placed into those seats.
And so can you tell us a little bit more and about the types of commissions and boards that are out there? The link that we have on that full list, there's over 500, and I feel like they wield a lot of power in Maryland. Could you all speak to what that really looks like?
Sure. So the list, if folks have an opportunity to take a look, I would encourage you to do so. There is probably a commission or a board or a work group within the state that your expertise would be welcome on. I mean, there are boards that are focused primarily on various issues like children, education, emergency management. It really runs the gamut. And another thing to consider is that now that we have a new administration, there may be new boards that are created by executive order, but most are created by statute if they are a particular commission that is termed to study a particular issue. So I would definitely encourage attendees to take a look at that list and see what might be most advantageous for you to seek out. And it sounds like Ellen's trying to pop in there.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo and add a little bit to what Delora just said. I mean, the list is pretty extensive and expansive, and many of them do wield a lot of power. One example will be if, let's say, that you were an architect, and many of these boards and commissions look at the standards of scope of practice within certain industries. So they can be game changers for your specific interest, depending on what board that is. And the only other thing I would add too, when looking at these boards, you know, it is good, and oftentimes many people do not, you know, think out of the box with respect to your interest as well, Rebecca. You know, an example would be if you are a woman leader in your community and an architect, there's probably a board there that talks about inclusion in women leadership away from your specific interests. So anyway, I just wanted to add to Delora's comments that they do wield a lot of power, some more than others, but they're important participation. Thank you.
Well, and we'll circle back a little bit more to those qualifications and different ways that the government is trying to ensure diversity in skill, geography, race, ethnicity across the state boards and commissions. But let's talk a little bit about who actually makes the appointments and how that works. And we've got a couple people up here on the screen now. So tell us more about. Of course, Wes Moore holds all the cards there, but Tisha Edwards, the appointment secretary, Bill Ferguson, the Senate president, and Adrian Jones, Speaker of the House, also have important roles to play. So tell us a little bit about this mix of people making appointments or recommendations.
Sure, I'll take a top-down approach here, starting with the executive branch and gubernatorial appointments. So as you mentioned, Tisha Edwards, who has a long career in public service, has worked for the mayor of Baltimore for a time as chief of staff, went on to be the interim director for Baltimore City Public Schools, or CEO, actually, of Baltimore City Public Schools, then actually was chief of staff of the Wes Moore campaign before being appointed as appointment secretary. So She certainly has connections within the political world, albeit at various points, but she has a huge job ahead of her in assisting the governor in making some of those 1,700 appointments. Now, they don't all become right at once. All boards in the state of Maryland have staggered terms. And that's just to allow some folks that have a historical knowledge to help to onboard folks that are coming in with new appointments. So, there will be some holdouts. There may even be from the Hogan administration. There may even be some holdouts from the O'Malley administration, depending on how long folks have been on a particular board and whether or not there are term limits and if they've continued to serve on the board over time. So the thing to think about there is that, yes, there are a lot of appointments. Some are more urgent than others. And as Ellen mentioned, some are more prominent than others. But each sets guidelines and policies that affect Maryland residents. So Tisha Edwards is the person that will be looking at all of those gubernatorial appointments. She is the person that will be doing the vetting and the qualifications, her in her office. Next, you have the Senate President and the Speaker of the House. They actually set quite a bit of appointments. So many times, statutes that create boards and commissions, in the language of the statute, it will lay out that the governor has X amount of appointments. But then it may also lay out that the Senate President and the Speaker also has a few seats on a particular board or commission that they may designate or select candidates for. So that's another way. It's not just one path to serve on some of these boards and commissions. There's many ways to be appointed. There's also, we don't have it listed here, but there's also opportunities, of course, on the local level where your mayor or county executive or city council members might have the opportunity to appoint folks to boards. So that's another way to kind of find a path onto a board or commission if you are more focused on local endeavors and setting policies there. So lots of opportunities, more than one way to get into a door or get into service on a board or commission. So I just wanted to really kind of stress that for this slide. Ellen, did you have anything you would like to add?
Yeah. One addition to sometimes specific industries can also make their own appointments. That's become more and more prevalent. That we've seen on some of the newer boards and commissions where Delora's right, they all generally have to go through these 4 people here up on the screen. But an example would be, let's say, again, I'll go back to the Maryland Association of Architects can nominate one individual to a specific board as well. That's just an example. So I just wanted to add that there's also that path as well within your own industry expertise or association sometimes becomes a good path as well to engagement.
Mm-hmm. So, the people that we're looking at, these who can make appointments, how political a process is this really? If our participants or our listeners don't really know, like if you don't know Tisha, if you don't know Senator Ferguson or Speaker Jones, what is there a path forward? I mean, how political are these appointments truly?
It depends on the board of the commission, to be very honest with you. Some are very highly coveted positions and they're very political. And then there are others where they would just like to find the best qualified candidate. And, the process is pretty standard. I mean, on a very baseline level, and I hope I'm not jumping ahead too far here because it might be a discussion for another slide, but on a very baseline level, you can expect to send in your credentials like you would for any other position or job position or career position that you might be looking for. Expect a lengthy vetting process, an interview process. However, to your question, there are certainly opportunities to reach out to various folks. For instance, if you are interested in an appointment by the Speaker of the House, and perhaps you happen to have a very good relationship with one of your delegates, and you know that delegate has a great relationship with the speaker, maybe you ask them to write you a letter in support of your seeking candidacy for that particular appointment. There's ways to bolster your application. And, I think those things couldn't hurt whether it's political or not, but on a very baseline level, you can expect what you would encounter for a new job position and interview process very closely tracks with that. Ellen? And I can't see you, so I just want to make sure that I'm creating space.
I appreciate that. No, I won't be getting appointed to the Zoom board on how to operate. But anyway, I hope that brings. No, Delora said, I think her first sentence when you said how political are they, she did say, probably the quote of that question is that it depends on the board, right? And the priorities of the House and Senate and the governor as well. But it's been my historic observation that also the governors and these legislators, when they form a board, they do want diversity, they want geographic diversity, and they want good citizenship and good citizens and expertise. So it does depend, and when I say that, you can see me smile, but that should not be a deterrent for reaching out to the boards that interest you if you feel you have that expertise and can fill that spot.
All right, well then let's jump into the qualifications. So we talked a little bit about geographic and professional qualifications, diversity, and local sort of advice from local jurisdictions. And so if we can, and I think we've covered that fairly well, I do want to open up to our participants if there are questions on anything we've covered thus far before we kind of switch gears into, the hows to getting to applications and things like that. Does anyone have any questions or things they'd like to bring up? You can either just shout out or put it in the chat. All right, I feel like everyone is reeling from Zoom being kind of crazy today. So I'm sorry, Tanya, did you have something you wanted to bring up? Okay, all right. So then any other, Delora and Ellen, any other advice about qualifications? And one of the things I'd like to know a little bit about is when you're looking for those qualifications, we're switching administrations. We're going from a Republican administration to a Democratic administration. Do some of those qualifications have to do with political parties or whether or not you've been a supporter of Westmore from the beginning? What does that look like in terms of qualifications for these types of appointments?
Sure. Westmore, Governor-elect Westmore has said in various forums, not just he is looking to create a very diverse administration, but more importantly, he wants qualified individuals around him and working within the administration, no matter the party affiliation or who they've supported in previous elections. He has appointed a Republican to his transition steering committee, former Senator Addie Eckert. He is, and the reason he did that is because he understands her deep knowledge of her district, of rural areas, how important it is for folks to have a voice in this transition period. So, just to be clear, I think you can't be, of course, diametrically opposed to what the governor-elect is seeking to accomplish. But if you are supportive of what he is seeking to accomplish, I think certainly he would want to support members of the Democratic Party, but that is, if you are not a member of the Democratic Party, that is not a deal breaker, with the caveat that you are supportive of the vision and mission of what his administration is trying to accomplish. I think one of the things that can be a major deal breaker on some of these boards are potentials for conflict of interest. So you have to be very clear on what the qualifications are, what the exclusions might be. While there are boards where your expertise in a particular industry is welcome and is a great asset, there are other instances on boards where it's specifically said that you cannot be from this part of industry, right? So those are things to consider. But on diversity, I want to also stress that it's not just about your race, it's also about your sex, it's also about where you sit in the state. It's not just a focus on the largest counties and city of Maryland. There is also wanting to be representation from the western part of the state and from the shore. So those are all things to consider, even as we have been communicating with Governor-elect Moore's new fledgling administration and setting that up. We've gotten requests where it says, do you know anyone in this industry that is on the Eastern Shore? Very specific, kind of wanting to make sure that representation is there. So I'd say to really put your assets on display, things that you might not think would be helpful or useful to you, may very well be the thing that they are seeking. So yeah, I hope I hope I answered that question. And Ellen, if you have anything else to add.
No, nothing to add to that. Perfectly articulated. Thank you, Delora.
And I also feel like in terms of those professional qualifications, there are a couple boards that I follow that, require someone with experience in the tech industry or specifically an attorney. So there's all sorts of sort of oddball requirements that come along depending on the board and commission. So at this point, let's kind of switch gears to talk about general advice on getting on expressing interest. And also specifically, I wanted to make sure participants know how the process may be changing or has the ability to change as we switch from administration to administration. So previously, if you've sought a government appointment before, you went to the MSA website and there was this long application which had some scary parts in it about conflict of interest and, like sort of everything about you. So Delora and Ellen, can you talk us through what you see people should be doing right now to express interest and how to hone in on what might be the best fit for them?
Sure.
I think, Delora, you go ahead. You go.
No, please do. Please do.
No, I think on the slide, definitely do your research, look for what interests you, whether it's professionally or personally, and that, do the right outreach. If it's a association, an industry board, I would look to try to reach out to your sister peers or association that you've been involved in, and then, make sure you send a letter of interest. I'm going to turn it over to Delora now, because she's been working pretty closely, at least with our clients who are seeking to engage in the Moore administration at a number of levels. With, Delora, why don't you talk about the website and, how that's a must first step?
Sure. So yes, I for the last 8 years, the Hogan administration, on the appointments office landing page, you had what Rebecca mentioned about a very regimented application process, and time again we've heard from the Hogan administration, we might even know who we want to put in the seat, but you must go to the website and fill out the form. If you're not on there, if you haven't done it, we can't even look at it, right? So they might know who they want to appoint, or they might say, oh, you're a wonderful, wonderful candidate. However, you must go through the portal, because that's how we keep track of everything. And if you're not in the portal, we can't even consider you. So the key is to really make sure that you're following the procedures that the Westmore administration will implement in order to fill these boards and commissions. Now, right now, it's unclear on what that landing page might look like after January 18th, when we then transition over. However, right now, the closest thing we have is the transition team website. And on that website currently, you can find out information for various events, but most importantly, and what you might be interested in, are two links on that transition website. And one of which is a very simple form that just takes your name, your email, and your interest on serving on one of the transition committees. Now, the names of the chairs and the co-chairs of those transmission committees have been announced. If you have it, you would want to put your information, of course, in that portal as they have instructed. And then, if you take a look at the folks who have been appointed already in the transition team, maybe you might want to send them a note and say, I have applied, here's what I'm interested in. And so that they know that you've already applied, your name is in a queue, and you have a tremendous amount of interest. This is all voluntary for the transition team. They will start meeting very quickly. If they have not already set their meeting dates, they have much to get accomplished before January 18th. So it will move very quickly. And this is all volunteer. No one's being paid for this. So they really would like to see talent on those teams. Another portal that is also there is it generally says, or generally is a portal for resumes, and that could be for appointments or for positions within the administration, paid working positions within the administration. So if that's something you think you might be interested in the future, it would be good to go ahead and do that now, fill out that information so that you're in the queue. The reason this slide is really kind of general advice expressing interest is because, there are so many boards, there's so many opportunities, and they all have different kind of, with the exception of, you usually have to go to a portal and put in your general information and your qualifications. They each have different requirements of who is making the appointment, what the qualifications are, exclusionary provisions. And so that is probably the first step, and the key is to go to the initial website that we talked about at the beginning of this call. It has a wealth of information about each of the boards, what the terms are, what's vacant, what might be upcoming vacant. And then couple that with the transition team website, because we really are in an overlapping time right now. So that's why I'm saying kind of look at both.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead, Ellen.
No, I was going to say, just again, stress the portal. I do know that the transition team and Moore's initial staff are reaching back out once you sign up through the portal. I got an example here where somebody showed an interest in participation on a board, and they did receive a follow-up saying, thank you, we've received this. Please continue on to this next level of application. So I did just want to, again, underscore exclamation point, Delora. Perfect.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so I think the really important thing to remember is that the change in administration is a full change. It doesn't sound like, not that all the resumes and applications that are in the Hogan administration's portal for these appointments, they might not just disappear, but there's no guarantee or even likelihood that the Moore administration is going to go back to all of those pieces. You kind of it sounds like you really should start fresh and submit your resume to the transition team website as a first step. Am I getting that right?
Yes.
All
Yep,
right.
absolutely.
Okay, so I just again want to encourage anyone who has questions to pop in and ask those questions. You have amazing experts who have done these things, been through the change of administrations before, so definitely utilize their expertise. And let's talk about, oh yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So as I mentioned, I am on the Governor's Family Violence Council. Should we proceed with caution just in terms of any activities or efforts that we're focusing on to wait to see what Governor Moore's focus might be, or should we continue to proceed?
You mean for your current charge on the board that you sit on currently?
Currently, yes.
You will receive information from the appointments office once they have a chance to kind of review everything. I think you stay the course until you hear differently.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Agree. Yeah, agree.
And so when we talk, I don't want to skip around this slide too much, but we're now going to talk about upcoming vacancies and sort of what happens, go over some examples of different boards, how you determine what seats are coming open and your path forward. And timing also, it's my understanding, and just want to check in on this, you know, your term doesn't end on the board. If your term is set to end in, you know, January of 2024, your term is still going to end on that board in 2024. It doesn't make a full-scale break. And so I just wanted to clarify that for people who might be confused or concerned that it's a completely new, fresh slate.
That's correct. Your term runs until the end of your term. However, on highly coveted boards like the Maryland Stadium Authority, the Board of Regents, it is not unheard of for when a new governor comes in to request a letter of resignation from certain members because maybe they promised those positions to someone, you know, but that's really only with the very highly coveted boards. You don't really see that in all the time, but I just want to let participants know that it can happen, and it does happen on some of the very powerful and prominent boards.
Thank you for that. So everybody stay tuned. Let's talk a little bit about what kind of examples, you know, whenever I go to the link and look at all 500 plus state boards and commissions, I get a little overwhelmed. So can you talk a little bit about what the what boards and commissions are available that we might not necessarily think of as appointed areas? You know, we talked on your examples, you were talking about school boards and Board of Regents and DLLR and things like that. Can you expound on that a little bit more, Delora?
Sure. So I'm actually taking a look at it as we're talking, because you're absolutely right. There are a ton, and it can be overwhelming. I think one way to be helpful to kind of navigate is going onto the page and searching maybe keywords of what you might be interested in, and then that might pull up. There's a whole section where there's like boards that just start with health, and it's all about, you know, things in the healthcare space. But for example, there is a statewide steering committee on services for adults with sickle cell disease. That is very, very specific, right? Sport Fisheries Advisory Commission, very specific. I mean, maybe you like sport fisheries and you want to have a say on where people can do their fishing, right? You know, there are so many. And then the nice thing about the Maryland Manual, which is the first link that we sent, is that you can just poke around in it. You open it up, it will tell you exactly who the staff is, who you can email, what their website is, who's appointed. So let's take an example for the statewide steering committee on services for adults with sickle cell disease. We have appointed by the Secretary of Health for 2-year terms, right? So we have 2 rolling off that are on. They roll off this year in 2022. Then you have 1 vacancy, and it also tells you who else's terms expire in 2022. Then you have a list of individuals whose terms expires in 2024, right? So these people are probably serving still at the pleasure of the Secretary of Health, but with the new administration, we can certainly expect that we'll have a new Secretary of Health, right? That will make appointments to all of these, to the 1 vacancy that is there, and then of course, to the ones that are rolling off in 2022. So if a person was interested in this, they would want to go ahead and start working to get their nomination and notify the new Secretary of Health, because this is a particular interest of theirs. And you can have just generally the information on who to contact, what the charge of the board is. That's also located on that page. Any reporting requirements to the General Assembly or the executive branch, what the purview is. It really gives you a wealth of information. So that's a little bit of a way to kind of dip your toe in and see, okay, maybe that's on my B list of boards that I might be interested in. Let me keep looking, so that kind of helps you to narrow down your focus. But that's just an example of a very niche kind of focus on a board. And then there are other kinds of boards like the Suicide Fatality Review Committee, which is also very, very specific, also appointed by the Secretary of Health, individuals to 3-year terms, and that's also laid out. So it really, really can give you all the information you need on who you need to reach out to, what the openings may be, upcoming openings, and how you can begin to position yourself to be considered.
So
the one thing I would add, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. Definitely add, Ellen, please.
Yeah. I mean, that was a great overview of that. It's also important to note that once things get moving, you can just offer yourself as a public servant within a subject matter. So although you might want to seek one board, but you can seek more than one and look for more than one opportunity to serve as well.
And that actually plays into something that I was going to ask about. So, if you don't, maybe serving on the sickle cell board has not been your dream, but you want to do something in like health disparities or health in general, when you're seeking an appointment, it sounds like it makes sense to say, here's more about me. Here are my areas of expertise, and I'm willing to serve kind of almost wherever. Is that an appropriate way to navigate that? And with the idea that maybe you're using it as a stepping stone, if you've never been appointed before, do you kind of go how picky do you get to be is I guess my real question.
For boards that don't have a tremendous amount of demand, you can be very picky. For boards that do, you can be less picky. I think you talked about health disparities, right? So one thing you'll also notice on the Maryland Manual website that has boards and commissions, where you have the link to more information on the board, there's also in parens a little kind of abbreviation, and that's for various administrative agencies, right? So if you're looking at health, you'll see next to many of the boards, right, is a abbreviation for DH, which is the Department of Health, right? So you are 9 times out of 10 going to be looking for an appointment by the secretary. Either the secretary has been given authority via the statute that created the commission to make appointments, or it was given directly in statute to the secretary, but they have the discretion of having a designee. So in those instances, yes, I think you can, have the opportunity to just generally say, here's what I'm interested in. I understand that the secretary or a subcommission under the secretary's purview, like the Maryland Healthcare Commission, appoints several people on this list, right? I would like to be considered. Here are my credentials. And so you can absolutely do that. But again, you got to do the work on the front end to make sure that you have correct who you would be addressing that to, and that they actually have the authority to place you where you would like to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ellen, anything you want to add on that?
Nope, nothing to add.
Okay, so when we talked about upcoming open seats, Delora, you had said, such and such was open in 2024 and 2022. Is there a season? Is there a date that by which, those 2022 seats, is that a calendar year deadline? Is that, do they make appointments at the February 19th green bag deadline? How do you know which month those openings occur? And does it matter?
It does, and it does vary. It's usually best to kind of ask because it does vary depending on when people were placed. It can be different, but some boards and commissions like to do it all at once. So they have a group of new people that are coming in together. But certainly for the green bag, those are things that people are working on now because they have to make sure that they have time to vet individuals to get them in front of by the deadline to get them in front of the Senate for confirmation. So that's a pretty kind of steady thing. I would say it's a little accelerated this year, of course, because we are changing over. Ellen?
Yeah, the green bag I think is February 18th. So yeah, those are underway, and then Dolores writes the rest. It staggers, and people resign from boards and are appointed during their interim terms. So that's what I was going to add.
Okay, so just to kind of summarize, when we think about the path, what it seems to me from our conversation is that if you're interested in serving on a board or commission, first you need to narrow and define sort of what your top 10, your target list might be, and then look at who's already sitting on that board, who staffs it administratively, and sort of start to look at your connections to see who you might know or who you just need to send a letter of interest to, and keeping in mind that those people may be your local elected officials. They may be people other than just the appointment secretary. So broaden your look a little bit. And then be available for opportunities, because the runway could be long on this. You may be, it's not necessarily you raise your hand and immediately are like, oh, great, next week you'll be on a board. This could be a longer process, and it truly is about positioning yourself. Am I getting that right? Or are there tweaks to that sort of process or path that I've defined that you would suggest?
No, I think you absolutely have gotten that right. Only thing I would add is that, after January 18th, take a look at the website, see what the Moore administration, if they're keeping it closely to because everything from the transition team and the governor-elect websites will then shift over to the official state website. So the appointment secretary might decide that they want to structure it differently than the Hogan administration, or she might decide that she wants to keep it the same for the first year and see how it works out. So definitely after January 18th, take a look at Maryland specific website for the appointment secretary, appointments office, and definitely, just keep your ears to the ground. Make sure you sign up for alerts and the governor-elect's information until that is no longer the source of the place to get the information for the incoming administration. So I just wanted to flag that, and then you can just get yourself familiar with, and you'll be good for the next four years at the very least. Yeah, that's pretty much it on that one. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ellen, anything you want to add?
Nope, I don't. I just want to thank you for the opportunity.
Yes,
terrific.
I enjoyed the conversation.
Well, I'm not letting you all slip through my fingers just yet, because I want to open up to see if anybody has questions. And if not, Questions going once, going twice, anyone?
Good morning. This is Katrina Patterson. I do have a question. If you have an interest possibly in more than one commission and you're not quite sure, familiar with the openings or the competition, do you suggest a person applying for more than one commission and seeing which one they get into? Or should they strongly encourage to only submit for one commission vacancy?
I would suggest applying for every commission that you're interested in. We are in the middle of a tremendous amount of change. You will see that as folks are moving along, as the Moore Miller administration taps talent, there will be a tremendous amount of movement. And what happens when you have so much movement is that people find that they no longer can serve on these boards. They have to resign. They have to, because they are now in a different position, and they can no longer hold both seats. So even though, you might not know who else is applying, or what the competition might be, my suggestion would be you're filling out all this information anyway. You may as well go after what you're interested in and see what becomes available. Because even though we're looking at this website with who's on, who's off, that can change very quickly. And I anticipate that many of these will change over the next 6 to 12 months. So my suggestion would be go for it.
And that's always a great suggestion. I think when in doubt, jump in, try something new. And so as we end up, I did want to let people know our next steps, and this is for Executive Alliance members only. On December 7th and 14th, we'll have 2 workshops where you can just drop in, and what we'll do is help you target your short list. We'll think about who's in our membership, who we know, to start to make those connections. And then we'll also go through the formal application from the Hogan website, because even though the format may change, the questions most likely will not. They'll still want to know all the details about, sort of your background and your conflicts of interest and things like that. And so although we may not, it's good to have that information at the ready so that you can turn on a dime. So with that, I will thank our presenters, Delora and Ellen. Thank you for rolling with us on some of our technical glitches. I'm always grateful that we can, in fact, record things. And we really appreciate your support and Cornerstone's support in helping women achieve state board and commission appointments. So thank you so very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Great program.
Yes, thank you so
Great
much
program.
for inviting
Thank you.
us.
All right, my pleasure. And everyone have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you so much.